Hey guys, my name is Rodolphe Pierre-Louis from ReadyPolice.com and welcome to my first ever color grading tutorial using Magic Bullet looks. So in this tutorial, I'm pretty much going to show you how I pulled off this high-key dreamy look for this music video. We shot this music video about 2 years ago, and pretty much the main goal for that particular scene was I wanted everything to be really bright, very white, very dreamy looking. And that's really kind of tough to pull off sometimes because especially when it comes to set designing, as you can see here, the wall is all white, the windows over is blown out, the robe she's wearing is all white. So you can run into problems with that because it's just not something that's too nice to look at because everything is so white and bland. But that's actually the style I was going for. Like I wanted everything to be very high key and very heavenly looking, if you will. So before I even jump into Magic Bullet looks, I just want to make one thing clear. Whatever look you're going for, that look starts on the set. Don't just film something anyway and then just expect to magically get the look you're going for in color grading alone. I mean, you can get pretty close sometimes, but it's always a good idea to know what you want beforehand. And the lighting setup for this shot was actually very simple. It was very basic. It was pretty much the window was lighting the whole room, and then I had a 1000 watt tungsten light with a CTB gel pretty much lighting her from her left side. And that was pretty much it, just the sun and one light with a CTB gel on it. And yeah, it was pretty basic. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into Magic Bullet looks, and I will show you how I get that look. So now we're in Magic Bullet looks, and as you can see, these are all the filters that I use to get this particular look. So I'm going to start from scratch pretty much to walk you through the process of getting that look. So now the first thing is in this shot, when I was filming it, two things I actually didn't like that I did. One of them was the light that I used to light her was a very harsh light. If I were to do it again today, it would be, I would at least diffuse it or use a softbox or use an umbrella or something like that. And for the dreamy, heavenly look we're going for, like that was a problem because the light is so much so harsh on her face that it shows a lot of details, unwanted details you don't really want. And the other thing is I would light her more, maybe get the light a bit closer in there. But yeah, of course, this is post-production, so we can do something about that. So the very first thing we're going to do is a spot fill. And pretty much you have the window here. I'm just going to light her a bit more. And I think I put it around 10%. 12 is fine, we'll leave it at that. And pretty much the reason I use a spot fill and not like just up the exposure of her face is that the spot fill, especially for this look we're going for, it's a lot softer than just simply upping the exposure, like, and it reduces the contrast too. And for a high key look, you know, you pretty much reducing the contrast between light and dark. Like most of the stuff are very bright, so it reduces the contrast and it just makes it a bit softer, especially for the light situation I was just talking about. And over here you can see that's the spot exposure, and that would pretty much just up the exposure of her face. But the fill is actually a lot better for the look we're going for. So next up is going to be the curves. Now I actually use the curves a lot, like I really like that in Magic Bullet. I mean, it's a working theory. I've never actually done it, but I think the curves like have so much things you can do with them that you could pretty much color grade a whole scene with just that. Well, I'm not that adventurous to actually try it, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you could. So we're pretty much going to use the curves to add a bit of contrast in this scene. Of course, we don't want too much contrast, but we do want some contrast, so we're going to do that. And yeah, so going to start pulling this down, and the left is pretty much for the shadow areas, and as you go to the right, that's mostly for the highlights and stuff like that. And we're just going to bring it down slightly We actually don't want too much. So this is about good for the shadow areas, and you can see I could go even more. But right here is about good. And this is going to affect mostly the midtones, and we do want the midtones to be a little bit brighter. So about here looks good. So pretty much went from this to this. And you can see already, just adding the contrast in there and just kind of upping the highlights a bit already is getting us pretty close to our look. And you can see that was the before. And yeah, we're already getting in there, and that's already looks a lot better, a lot more cinematic than it did before. So next up is going to be the diffusion. Now the diffusion, you don't really have to add too much in there. I mean, you can just gauge it from the scene you're doing, how much diffusion you actually want on there. And for this one, we actually didn't really need too much. For the size of the diffusion, you can have it will be pretty big. But about right here would be good. And for the glow, actually didn't want the glow on there, and the reason being is I still wanted to retain like those lines in the window. Like I didn't want it to just be blown out like a big white thing. I mean, this could still work, but for this particular look I didn't really want to do that, so I actually put the glow down all the way to 0 and the highlights only. And that what that pretty much does is if you put it at 100%, then it will only affect the highlights. So only the highlights will be diffused. And if you put it down at 0, then pretty much everything will be diffused. And I didn't want, so I wanted it to be pretty high. So I put it about 80. Yeah, 81 would be good. So it's mostly just the highlights diffusing, but I also wanted a little bit of the shadows diffusing also. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the diffusion. And you can see here it just adds an extra dreamy look to it. And next up is going to be the three-way color corrector. In Magic Bullet Looks, it's called the Colorista three-way, and it's usually known as like the color wheels or something similar. So, so pretty much this is where a lot of the work actually happens in this. And one concept I'm going to go over is pretty much color contrast. And color contrast is, you know, you have the regular light and dark contrast, which is, for example, something like this. You know, I made the midtones brighter and the shadows darker. So that's, you know, just contrast based on light. And then there's also color contrast, which like a look they use a lot of in movies nowadays is the orange and teal look, or it's pretty much you have the midtones going to the orangey side and then the shadows going to more of a bluish teal kind of look. So that's what I mean by color contrast. And color contrast, when done wrong, if you like really overdo it, it just doesn't really look that good. Like I was just saying, a lot of people do get tired of the orange and teal look you see in a lot of movies. But we are going to use some of that for this, but I am not going to go too crazy with it. I just, you know, try to show you why, you know, it's good to use color contrast. Like that does create a pleasing image. So just don't overdo it, and yeah, just don't make it too obvious. So yeah, so let's go ahead and, you know, start. And depending on what look you were going for, like I still wanted it to be a little warm. So for the highlights, I'm actually gonna alter the highlights and just push them a little bit toward like a yellow, green, kind of like in the middle right here. And just to slightly push it, like it's not very big, but it's just already adds a little bit of warmth in there. And then for the midtones, I'm just going to push it slightly. So about here is good. And as I was saying about the color contrast, I actually am gonna do a little bit of the orange and teal look, but I think in this case, it actually works pretty good for the look I am going for. So pretty much went from this to this. And as you can see, the main differences for right here is doesn't really have that much color in it. And like I said, I wanted it to be a little bit warm, not too much, but slightly. So you can see it has a lot of green, a little bit of green in there and some orange. And that just really, brings out her hair. And this video also shot in Miami, so I wanted it to still have that warmth look to it too. But we're still not to the main look we want, because remember, we want it very high key. We want to actually push the limits of how bright we can actually get this thing to be, because I want it to seem like the light is just wrapping all around her. So for the midtones, we're actually going to bring that up a bit. And let's put down the shadows slightly. So pretty much went from this to this. And by upping the midtones, you really, brighten her face, brighten her hair. And yeah, it's just, like I said, it's just very white all around and very dreamy looking. And that's pretty much the look we wanted. So once we're done with the colorista three-way, part of what I was saying earlier is because of the harsh light, we had a lot of unwanted detail on her face, and this is like a music video, so we do want to preserve portray the best image of the singer. So that's what the Cosmo is for. It's pretty much a tool in Magic Bullet Looks that that's used to just kind of soften people's faces and skin to remove like blemishes and stuff like that. And pretty much it works like a diffuser, except it tries to find the skin of the actual uh, person. For example, you can see the skin tolerance if I put it up or put it down. It's almost trying to see, what areas should be affected by this diffusion. So that's very helpful because, if you want to diffuse her face a little bit, you don't really want to diffuse the whole video. So that's pretty helpful to that. And for the skin soften, like I don't really like to overdo it because then it looks super fake. And if you do it and it looks fake, then it's kind of like, well, why did you even do it? So I actually put it at the skin soften at like 7%. So I think that's actually going to be good. Depending in your particular shot, you can put higher. But again, the biggest reason I am using Cosmo for this is, like I said, the harsh light. That was just too light, too harsh for this particular shot. And the last thing I did, and that's just something I do a lot, like it's not a rule and it's not, well, first of all, color grading, I don't like to think as color grading as a rule at all. It's just, I like to be free and just kind of experiment with different things. But one thing I always like to do is always really start with a curve. And then once I get the main look, I end it with another curves just to, see if there's any more, I could do to make it better or whatever. So, that's just personally me. And for curves, I find that this point and that point, like it's like the second to last on each point. Like, if you ever want to just make a slight adjustment to test something out, I mean, give it a try. It works for me. I mean, just give it a try and just only adjust these two, and you can actually get some pretty cool results, some pretty soft results. And also, the reason I like to use curves over the regular uh contrast look is that it just gives you more options. Like it allows you to do a lot more than with the image than simply, putting up the contrast or putting down the brightness and stuff like that. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I just put it down slightly. And as you can see, it just adds a little bit of contrast. But what I like about the curve is that the contrast it gives, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a lot richer and it's kind of softer too than a regular contrast. So I could even push it down more and it would still have that, that very nice look to it. But it's a high key look, so we can't have like too much darkness going on in there. And even that, I'm just doing it because, well, that's me. So yeah, let's just go ahead and put up a little bit of, put that down, and let's go right here and just slightly put it up. And so pretty much we add more contrast to the video and by pretty much just slightly adjusting these. And another thing I did, and that again goes back to color contrast, is I went to the red channels of the curve and just slightly put down the shadow areas. And I put it down softly so you don't see it too much, but if I pull it down more, you can see that it starts going green because we're moving red in the shadows pretty much. But I'm just going to leave it about right here. So now it's barely noticeable, but what it does is just add some more contrast to the hair because you have the yellowish hair, and then just kind of decrease some of the red in the dark areas. So it's just some little basic slight adjustment that just adds a pretty cool look to it. And one thing that I actually skipped that I actually did in the first look I did, I mean, for this right now, I think that actually looks pretty great. Uh, I mean, especially coming from this to this, like it's just the right amount. It's not too over the top. But one thing I actually did in the original look that I actually forgot, well, we're going to do it right now. It's pretty much the range HSL, and that's pretty much it lets you adjust the hue and saturation and the hue and lightness from different colors of the image, so you can adjust these different colors separately. And of course the orange right here, that's where the skin tones mostly are. And the thing I'm actually going to change about that is that her face, well, her skin, it's a little bit saturated, and I mean that's not bad in any by any means. But for the look, I wanted everything to just kind of blend out more. So what I actually did is that I slightly just decreased some of the saturation in her face, and by that, her face looks a bit wider, and that adds to the overall look I'm pretty much going for. So for this, it's a little bit more orangey. She kind of slightly has a tan, and by just decreasing the saturation slightly, it just adds to the whole. The room is very bright and everything is also soft and white looking. And what I also did is I went to the lightness and I pretty much just up the lightness of her face slightly. So yeah, so pretty much that's how I got that look. It wasn't too complicated. Not a lot went into that, so it was pretty much just a spot fill, just to kind of fill in her face and the curves, the diffusion, the colorista three-way, the range HSL, and the curves. which are totally optional, but I just like the look it gives. And of course the Cosmo to just kind of soften the skin and just makes it look a lot better, especially for a music video. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you learned something. For more filmmaking tips and tutorials, be sure to follow my blog at rodolphe.com/blog. That's pretty much where every week I try to put out something new, whether it's about production, visual effects, color grading. So if you want to learn more, be sure to check it out. And also be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel also to keep updated with my latest tutorials and videos. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching and have a good one.